Streaming viewership data analyzing research firm Samba TV reported this morning on Twitter following an early release in a Deadline article yesterday. 1.5 million U.S. households watched the season finale of the Book of Boba Fett in its first 5 days of streaming on Disney+. That's 36% higher than the Mandalorian Season 2 finale, where, of course, Luke Skywalker returned to huge fanfare and a massive online swell of outpouring of love and devotion to that character. That buzz went on for weeks. So how then did the Book of Boba Fett manage to not only surpass that, but surpass it by a not insignificant margin? Well, I think part of the issue may lie within some numbers that the Walt Disney Company recently reported during their earnings call last week on February 9th. I think there may be some other things to it as well. But for that today, I'm joined once again by my friend Kamran Pasha. Make sure you guys subscribe to Kamran on his Patreon. A link will be in the description to this video below as always. And let's get into it. Here we go. Renegade Online. All right, folks, welcome back. Another great day here at Valiant Renegade. Good to see everybody out there. And if you have not already, and you're like one of the 60 or 70% of folks watching this video that are not yet subscribed, maybe a new viewer to this channel, welcome aboard. It's good to have you. We always try to put Hollywood through the business and financial lens of reality here. So if you're like one of those folks not yet subscribed, please hit that like, that subscribe, hit that notification bell, share this sucker out on the social medias, and do leave a comment before you check out today. So Kamran Pasha, back with me once again. We want to talk about some of the recent news from both Nielsen and then reported by Deadline magazine, talking about the finale ratings by Samba TV and some of the Nielsen numbers, as I said recently, although they haven't quite caught up to the last episode yet as far as Nielsen goes. But some of these numbers kind of stunning for this last episode of the Book of Boba Fett. Reportedly, and let me go ahead and pull the article up, Kamran.
Okay.
Reportedly, 36% higher viewership than what Samba TV recorded for the first 5 days of the Season 2 finale of The Mandalorian, of course, where Luke Skywalker made his triumphant return. So, Kamran, what's some of your thoughts on this?
Well, I'm going to say something that might startle people. Is I was not startled by this. I think a lot of people were, because there has been sort of certainly a narrative that's been out there amongst, certainly online, that this whole show has been a disaster and people are walking away from it. I think the show has been uneven. There were elements of the show that I liked in the first few episodes, and there were elements I didn't like. There were entire episodes, in episode 3, I didn't really care for. And then there was a market change in the show, partly because it seemed like it was another show or multiple other shows were stuffed in. And I stated on my Patreon my theories as to what I believe were politically happening there in order to salvage a production that wasn't working because of political pressures internally. But after a couple of very successful creatively episodes 5 and 6, which were largely well received, and in the online discussion were well received, even though people were complaining, well, it's not really Boba Fett and all of that, and then people had certain expectations for the final episode, certainly in the online community and the conversation. Not all of those expectations were met, and so a lot of people walked away unhappy. As I stated on my Patreon, after I wrote it at 2 a.m. in the morning after watching it, I very much liked it. I know that you didn't care for it as much, but I did very much like that final episode. I was having a lot of fun. I was laughing and cheering. For me, it was just good old Star Wars, and I wasn't trying to figure out what does this mean for the overarching franchise. I was just enjoying the moment, which is all I'm looking for in Star Wars, right? The moment I stop enjoying the moment, I stop. I was watching The Last Jedi. I didn't enjoy it. I didn't care to the future or the past. I just didn't enjoy that. And that was that. And here I enjoyed this. So I wasn't surprised. And I wrote on my Patreon immediately after, at 2 a.m. in the morning, right after I watched it. I wrote that I think this is going to startle people. I think that the immediate reaction in some of the more vocal elements of the online community will be, this isn't what we wanted. This is not what we expected. We're betrayed. And they'll be upset. And it was largely that reaction. But I said, I think the audience is going to react relatively positive, because just like I'm sitting there, I'm laughing, I'm joking, I'm jumping up and down. Oh my God, there's the Rancor. I was having a lot of fun. And I thought the vast majority of the audience is going to have fun with this. They may not be as good as watching Luke Skywalker back again, but after having watched some mediocre episodes in the first part of the season, I was very satisfied. And I thought that's the majority of the audience. And so what's interesting about this, we could talk about the numbers here, because these are from Samba TV, and these are over, my understanding is over the first 5 days. So we have 5 days worth of returns. It's not just who tuned in that night. You know, one of the principles of Hollywood is it doesn't matter what tonight's ratings are, it's what next week's ratings are, or in this case, what tomorrow's ratings are, right? And so because people will watch something very excited about the buzz around it, and if they're not happy with it, they don't come back for it a second time or come back to see what's offered next. I experienced that on the show Bionic Woman when I was a producer on that show on NBC. We had something like 16 million viewers and for our pilot, because everyone's like, oh, the Bionic Woman is coming back after 40 years. And then a lot of people didn't like the pilot. And the next episode was something like 8 million. So we lost 50% of our audience in 1 week. That was our signal that the audience wasn't responding to the material, right? And so here we've had 5 days of data. And during this 5 days, this was the most talked about thing on the online communities and YouTube and other areas, on Twitter, social media, people expressing their passionate opinions on this. And yet people came back after hearing all that feedback over several days. They still came back and watched it, to the point that it did even better than the Mandalorian season 2 finale, which everyone heard. Luke is back. I had unsubscribed from Disney Plus after they had sort of treated Ms. Carano very poorly, and then actually no, that's not the correct sequence of events. I never subscribed to Disney Plus because I was done with Star Wars after The Last Jedi. I was so hurt by that, and then when I heard Luke was back, the next morning, within 24 hours, I had subscribed, and I binge watched 2 seasons of The Mandalorian all the way to the climax. I would then later unsubscribe because I didn't like how they treated Gina Carano, and I came back because I wanted to give it a shot this year, and you know, and I've had a mixed reaction, but I enjoyed the ending of the show. So all that being said, I'm not surprised by these numbers, but I think others will be, because they didn't really think. I think a lot of people didn't gauge where the audience's expectations were.
I think to part of your point, I do agree that certainly, and we're going to look at both the Samba, well, we've got the Samba up now, but I want to go to the Nielsen numbers in a minute. Yeah. But I'll bring up a few other interesting points that I have found in the data that pertains to this. Definitely, there seems to have been a roll-off, right, in terms of week 1 to week 2 to week 3 of Book of Boba Fett in terms of their successive releases. And just real quickly, we're not going to read through these articles, folks, but just to bring them up, you can go find these yourselves on Deadline, as I did. The first one here was the first week. This is from January 27th on Deadline. This is where the Book of Boba Fett came out. Of course, Cobra Kai was the huge win. But that had a 10-episode season drop at one time. I've also had all the previous seasons. Book of Boba Fett only had the one. It clocked in at 389 million minutes of view time for that week, according to Nielsen. The second week, it actually broke into the top 10 chart here. You can see this is from February 3rd. It cracks the top 10 chart. Now with 2 episodes, it went from 389 million to about, I believe, 563 million minutes of viewing. Now, again, that was with 2 episodes. And the second episode was, of course, much longer than the first. Then the third episode, Chapter 3, came out. And this is after a lot of fan reaction started, from what I saw, turning sour, right? A lot of people were complaining that the episodes were very sluggish. The narrative pacing was was bad, was slow, too much in the flashback
and the character wasn't quite developing properly in the early stages. Yes.
Yeah. And the third week, now this just came out in the last couple of days. The viewership dropped to 467 million minutes. Now you say to yourself, okay, well, the episode was shorter. That's still more than the first week. But remember, this is 467 million cumulative minutes between all 3 episodes being available. So this seems to suggest that the viewership was seemingly on a steady decline up to this point. Now, to your point, Cameron, I agree. I think episodes 5 and 6 were very good, and it certainly reinvigorated, I believe, the audience to a tremendous degree. I believe that when the Nielsen numbers catch up to speed, on episodes, this is episode 3 at this point. So we've got about 2 more weeks before we get to what happened the week that episode 5 came out, when we went back to Din Djarin and we went back to, the whole issue with Luke. And then, of course, episode 6, that same thing will be a week later. That seemed to drive audiences back into the show. That seemed to be a flashpoint, I think, in my opinion, to where a lot of people that had not really tuned into that show up to that point got engaged. So I think that led into quite a bit. And the other thing I wanted to bring up from a data standpoint real quick and then get your thoughts on all this. This is page 5 of the most recent Walt Disney Company earnings report that we just got back on February 9th, Wednesday of last week as we're recording this. So as you can see here, and we talked about this in a previous video, Disney started in this first fiscal quarter of 2022, which ended December 30th of 2021. Disney has changed how they're releasing this data. They're putting a lot more, let's call it transparency, in the numbers. We are now getting breakdowns in total numbers of subscribers by region. So to remind everybody, the Samba TV numbers that Kamran and I are discussing at 1.5 million or so U.S. households in the first 5 days watch that season 1 finale of Book of Boba Fett versus what Mando season 2 got. Well, let's look here. January 1st, 2021, in that same domestic market that Samba's measuring, they had 36.3 million. These are numbers according to Disney. 36.3 million total subscribers on the books at that point. And that is when Mando season 2, the big Luke episode, that would have encapsulated that subscribership base. January 1st, 2022, the quarter that they just reported, 42.9. So a change of 18%. So if we look at the numbers to say that Boba Fett's finale was up 36% from what we see with Mando season 2, then certainly right at 50% of that can be very well explained away by the mere increase in subscriber base. As far as the other 50%, that's where some more of the, I guess, subjective conversation can come in. So, Kamran, what are your thoughts on that one?
Well, yeah, I mean, as you indicated, well, first let me indicate on these numbers itself. The very fact that they're giving us more detail actually suggests a bit of self-confidence that they're going to be okay. Yeah, because you hide information when you're nervous. So it suggests that they feel they're going to be able to continue to provide more information that's going to support their leadership in this arena. Wonderful. I think the more information we all have, it's good for investors, it's good for viewers, and it's also good for the executives to get honest analysis of where they are, what's working, what's not working, and who their demographics are. That's helpful. So all that is great. And you've hit the one pivotal issue, which is that we've had a large expansion of Disney Plus, larger than we expected, and that's what caused the stock rally recently. But the pivotal thing is it accounts for 50% of the expansion of the viewership. So if the numbers on Samba were only 18% up, we could fully attribute that to it's just a larger base of people watching this. That's all. But it's twice that. So just suggest that of that larger base of people, there's a good amount of people that really did enjoy this episode, and that is meaningful. It is meaningful. It's meaningful feedback for Disney. It's meaningful feedback for Jon Favreau. And let me actually present my Pasha conspiracy theories that I like to relay on Patreon.
Go for it.
They tend to come true. So if you noticed, I don't recall that we did a video on this, Valiant, but if you remember, there was just a few weeks ago, there was a slew of articles coming out of Forbes criticizing the first few episodes of Boba Fett. And that was surprising because I've stated that Forbes has been a very open ally of Bob Chapek since last year when it was on Forbes that Chapek essentially, that first there were critiques of Disney and Lucasfilm and how Bob Chapek wasn't being allowed to really lead, right? And then that gave him the impetus to actually be able to assert his authority last year. So Forbes has always been a very open ally, represents investors. That makes sense. So like, why was there a slew one after the other over several days? This isn't a big topic for Forbes. Why are they focusing on this TV show? And I said, it's because they're being seeded by allies of Chapek, if not himself, right? And if the rumors that friends of ours like Doomcox and others have heard that, and what I believe that there was a lot of internal politics in certainly the first half of the show, that Ms. Kennedy and her sort of faction, her version of Star Wars was really asserting itself in those early episodes, and those are the episodes that Forbes is critiquing and saying are off the mark, it certainly gives Bob Chapek, and in my view, Bob Chapek and Jon Favreau, who I believe are allies, I think that's pretty public at this point because Favreau has now apparently been given a direct line to Chapek, right? And I think that's very clear that they're allies in this. So it seems to be that was all part of indicating that the version of Star Wars that doesn't work is the version being pushed by the current leaders of Lucasfilm. And then suddenly the version that seems to be getting audience reaction is the second half of the show, which is the version that I think Jon Favreau was able to assert on top of that politics. So it almost feels like this is a chess game to be able to say, you know, for Bob Chapek to say to Kathleen Kennedy, he's like, look, you know, we know first half of the show where you were really involved wasn't really working. And we even got these independent news organizations to say that, right? And now look at the viewership at the very end of the show, where if a show that was middling and not doing well comes up that strong at the end, suggests maybe our friend Mr. Favreau knows what he's doing. Why don't we defer to him moving forward on Obi-Wan and other things? It certainly seems to me the political chess game that is being played here.
It very well could be, and you might be right. I mean, we've talked about this at length. I mean, many of YouTube channel people out there have really scratched their heads at the complete disconnected nature of this entire story that we've had with the Book of Boba Fett, with the, you know, like you said, the first 4 episodes being so wildly different from the pacing, from just the overall production quality, the look, the feel, the tone that we got in episodes 5 and 6. It was night and day. And I remember thinking after episode 6, okay, what is episode 7 going to actually look like? Are we going back to what we got in the first 4? Are we going back to some hybrid of the two? Is it going to be something that was completely taken over at the end by, you know, Team Favreau or something like that in terms of his production? Because again, we seem to have, to remind everybody, established that, you know, Favreau was apparently not on set, which was extraordinarily unusual for these shows. He was not on set for the shooting of those early episodes, it would seem, because Tamura Morrison himself, in an interview that he did in tandem with Ming-Na Wen, talking about how he felt like he had too many lines, he was taking off his helmet too much, blah, blah, blah. And he got a phone call back from Jon Favreau or his assistant. They were in Atlanta doing something else, hint, hint, and just basically saying, yeah, do whatever the director tells you, Robert Rodriguez, and just go with it. And we posited on the last video that we did together about Boba Fett, saying that, you know, it just seems like maybe Rodriguez was handed instructions to just get Favreau from point A to point B. He's got some stuff to stick in the middle to basically act as a segue to Mando Season 3, which is why some people, I think, early on called Book of Boba Fett Mando Season 2.5. And now that seems to have, frankly, been confirmed as far as my opinion goes. It really felt like a bridge to get us there, which I do still think Mando Season 3 could very well drop at the end of this year. I know some people thinking it's going to be 2023, but if you follow the production schedule and the history they've had, if history is a guide, then based on when they started production of Mando 3, then we should see it before the end of the year. I'm thinking December again, as if history follows suit. They may decide to. Yeah.
And they have the energy now, Valiant, of the people responded. People were like, oh, okay, Din Djarin's back. Okay, I wasn't that happy with this version of Boba Fett. He's back. Oh, well, Baby Yoda's back. Okay, I like this stuff, right? They now have the feedback on that people want more of this stuff.
Yeah, and I think that may be what they're going for. I think it's going to be really interesting, like I said, to see where the Nielsen data falls in, because Nielsen and Samba do something very differently. And that's one of the other things that I think may be a potential variable in all this, is that it's also possible that Samba TV over the course of the last year has increased their sample size, or have been able to extrapolate more sophisticated or think more accurate data from the sample size that they have. You know, because it's very hard to say how accurate it is. But then again, I always like to look back and say, well, if Samba said this about this show and they said this about this show, even though the numbers might not be accurate, quote unquote, at least we're getting it from the same system of measure to give us a gauge of how well a show might be doing compared to another. So, you know, again, it is what it is right now. But I can, like I said, I can see how those episodes 5 and 6 probably drove a lot of extra audience into the finale of this, because I think there was a lot of interest in one of the main plot points of this, is to find out what Grogu was going to choose, right? What is he going to do? What is Luke's decision or reaction going to be to Grogu's choice? And of course, as I stipulated in my review of it, I said I found it very interesting that they did that whole thing off camera So we really have no idea what happened, but I think that that really built a big tune-in factor for this
we
episode.
don't know how that conversation went.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't.
Yeah, we don't know how the conversation went. We don't know. We don't know if it's really a binary choice or whether, you know, we'll be surprised in season 3 where suddenly Grogu with the armor pulls out the saber and he had it the whole time. We don't know yet. We don't know.
Right.
And we don't know how this played out. And that's intentional and that's good.
Yeah, and I agree with that. And
so I'll look. And the other thing I will add, again, going back to this idea. No, I interrupted you. Go ahead, please.
No, I was just going to say I agree with that. I think that was deliberate on the part of Favreau just to kind of leave that open. I mean, I assumed he was going to take the armor. That's what we were going to see. Because I said before, that's what Luke pretty much did in Empire. He decided he was going to leave to go help his friends. Even though he wasn't given an explicit choice, it was still his decision to go back to his friends in that moment. But he came back because he wanted to finish his training. He wanted to finish. And I think Mando understands that the best place for Grogu is with Luke. That was established in episode 5 when he walked away and realized that, no, the kid needs to be here. So, but go ahead. Give me some of your final thoughts on all this.
Well, yeah, I mean, and my final thoughts go to bring back to this idea of the 5 days that we have. I don't know if the breakdown reveals to us whether all of that increase in viewership was over the first night. I don't think it was. I think it was spread out probably over those 5 days, maybe not exactly evenly, but enough that there were people watching day 2, day 3, day 4, day 5 for them to get this overarching number. And that again suggests to me that the audience is largely satisfied with how Mr. Favreau concluded this. And I think there's a lot of, nail biting and hair pulling over some of the choices he made. And that's fine. If those are people's personal opinions, wonderful, right? But I think one should also be aware in the online community that the further you start disconnecting from the audience where they are, the less your own message on other stuff is going to get out. I don't think the audience views this show with the same lens as they view The Last Jedi. And I think harping on, if you didn't get everything you wanted in the Book of Boba Fett, that Jon Favreau has failed, Star Wars is finished, I'm never watching again, you're free not to watch again. But don't be startled if your own audience says, well, okay, I'm sorry you don't want to watch it. I want to watch it. You don't want to watch Obi-Wan? Well, I'm going to go watch Obi-Wan. So you have no review of Obi-Wan because you're boycotting Star Wars over this? I'm going to go watch a channel that's going to review Obi-Wan. And maybe if I don't agree with that channel's review of Obi-Wan, I'll go somewhere else. The audience we've discovered is this. One thing we've discovered, audience in general, but Star Wars in particular. If you give them what they want, they stick around. You don't give them what they want, they don't stick around. That's true for Star Wars. And I think that's also true for people that are speaking in the online community and thinking they represent the audience. If you're disconnected from where the audience's preferences are, I don't think they're going to stick around with you. So just be aware of that. You can make any choices you want in your conversations about this. But if your goal is, I'm representing the audience, well, let's see if you're actually representing the audience. I think this was a bit of a wake-up call to people who claim to represent the audience. I don't think they're on the same exact page right now. And I think it'll diverge even more over Obi-Wan.
I think it's an interesting observation. Look, people on YouTube or those of us, whether we're writing for Forbes magazine or talking online here, I think everybody, there's always the old confirmation bias issue. We think about, we represent an audience. We may not represent the audience, or at least the entire audience, right? But there's a portion of folks out there, just like us right now, like you really like the last episode. I didn't hate it, but I wasn't moved by it one way or the other. I was kind of in the middle, like a meh sort of attitude. I think there were some good elements, like you said, the Rancor, I thought that was enjoyable. There were some other portions of it who were enjoyable. There's some things I didn't like about it, but but look, that's the bottom line is that we're all here to express our views, but like you said, not make the mistake of thinking that we represent every single viewer out there. And I mean, I agree with that. And I think you're right. So it'll be interesting to see as the Nielsen numbers come out in the next few weeks, how this marries up against these Samba numbers, because we haven't really seen any Samba numbers between episodes 1 and 7 of this show. They really didn't, at least publicly, put out a trend line as to where the viewership was going. We got the beginning and the end. So we got a lot of missing data, but some of these Nielsen numbers I think are starting to fill in some of those gaps. And I think some of the expectations I had, like I said, with seeing some viewership decline in that middle session, episodes 3 and 4. But like I said, I expect episode 5 to. I think the week that episode 5 comes out, that will be by far and away, that'll be the best week they'd had up to this point. Is what I'm thinking. So we'll know in a couple of weeks. So, all right, Kamran. Well, thanks for joining us today. I appreciate you being here. Appreciate everybody out there watching. If you like the video, like I said before, please make sure you hit that like and subscribe button. Please hit that notification bell. Share this sucker out on the social medias, and do, most importantly, leave a comment before you head out the door. YouTube loves the comments, so we love getting the comments, and I do try to respond to as many of them as possible. So take care, and until next time, folks.